Your Highness, Wen Ruchun is a son of a family in Shaanxi province. He loved playing the piano since he was a child. Even when he lived in a hotel outside, he couldn't leave the piano for a moment. Once, on his way out to Shaanxi province, he passed an ancient temple and went into rest. Entering the temple gate, I saw a priest in a burqa sitting cross-legged in the hallway. The Taoist stick was leaning against the wall, and the ancestral organ was in a cloth bag. Upon seeing the piano, Ms. Wen touched her hobby and asked the Taoist, "Can you play too?" Taoist answer, "I just can't play well, and I'm willing to learn from my peers." I took the violin out of the bag and handed it to Wen Ruchun. Wen Ruchun picks up, sees the piano's delicate texture, tries to hook it up, and the sound is very crisp and crisp. Ms. Wen was delighted, playing a tune for Taoist priests who smiled and seemed not satisfied enough. Ms. Wen has used her skills. The Taoist laughs and says, "Yes, yes." But being a poor teacher isn't enough. Wen Ruchun asked him to play some music when he heard his tone of voice. The Taoist priest grabbed the piano and put it on his lap, and just a few strokes later, he felt calm, and after a while, the trees in the courtyard were full. Wen Ruchun was so surprised, he turned to the Taoist priests for advice. The Taoists each replayed the song several times. Wen Ruchun listened attentively and memorized it with great care, so that she got the rhythm of the music. The Taoist each tries to get him to play, then guides him, and says, after learning this, there is no other person to play against. From then on, Wen Ruchun was a master of mastery and meticulous study. After that, Wen Ruchun left for his hometown, still dozens of miles from home. It was too late, and it was raining so hard that he could not find a place to live for a while. Seeing a village by the road, he rushed to run. Desperate to get into the village, I saw a portal and rushed into it. Inside, silent, a moment later, a 17 and 18-year-old girl comes out, looking like an angel. She looked up at the living person and panicked back. Ms. Wen, who has not yet married, fell in love with the girl. At this point, an old woman comes out and asks what he does. Ms. Wen gave her name and asked for a place to stay. "It's okay to stay here. Just no bed," says the old lady. "If you don't mind yourself, you can build a floor with grass." Before long, the old woman lit a candle and spread the grass to the floor, looking enthusiastic. Asked what her last name was, Wen replied, "Zhao." The old woman said, "Her name is Huan. She is my niece and daughter. I don't think I can climb the ladder and form a marriage," says Wen. The old woman frowned and looked embarrassed, saying, "I can't say yes to this." Wen Ruchun asked her why, and the old woman said only, "It's hard to tell." Ms. Wen was disappointed and had to stop mentioning it. After the old woman left, he sat there playing the piano for the long night, seeing the grass soaking wet and rotten and unable to sleep. After the rain stopped, Wen Ruchun got up and went home before dawn. There's a guy in the county who's retired at home and loves talented people. Wen Ruchun visited him once and asked him to play a few songs. When Wen plays, it is only behind the curtain that a woman's son is listening. Suddenly, a gust of wind blows the curtains open and a 16 or 17-year-old girl appears, her beauty unmatched. It turns out that Zhang has a daughter, whose breast name is Good Laborer, who is good at phrasing and is famous in the area. Wen Ruchun fell in love and came home to talk to her mother, who invited the matchmaker to propose. Mr. Ch suspects that the Wen family is in disrepair and has no permission. But since listening to Wen Ruchun, the good worker has a deep admiration, and is often looking forward to hearing the beautiful piano again. But Wen Ruchun is frustrated because she can't get along with her family, and her wishes can't be fulfilled, and she will never enter the Ch family again. One day, a well-heeled worker strolls through the garden and finds an old stationery with a poem entitled Shu Chun. If you hate an idiot, think again. You will be turned upside down. The begonia is drunk, and the poplar is wounded. Old and new, you're still alive. You're like grass, apart, only in what day will it be dull? Today's furious spring saga, looking through the autumn water, is abandoned. How can I sleep well if I have a jealous conscience and a false alarm? It's like a long night. Looking at a year. It's less than a year. 3 years later. And who's not old? The good worker chanted the poems 3 or 4 times, liked them very much, then took them back to the house. Took out the exquisite and beautiful stationery, copied them carefully, and put them on the bookcase. After that, he couldn't find them again, so he thought that maybe the wind blew him away. It is just coincidence that Zhang passed through the door of the embroidery room of a good worker and picked up this citation, thinking it was a good job, hated words and frivolous words, and was not happy in his heart. He burned it and said it was not easy to explain, so he planned to marry off the good worker. At this time, Liu Buzhang's son in Lingshan County was just sending someone to promote him. Zhi was happy, but still wanted to see the son himself. Liu came to Ji's home, dressed beautifully and handsome, and Zhi was very satisfied with his hospitality. After his farewell, he lost an embroidered shoe under his seat. Mr. Zhi hated Mr. Liu's thoughtlessness and told the matchmaker about it. Mr. Liu repeatedly defended himself. Mr. Zhi refused to listen and finally turned down Mr. Liu's proposal. In the past, Kudzu had a green chrysanthemum, which he kept for himself. A good laborer keeps the chrysanthemums in her loft. At this point, 1 or 2 chrysanthemums in Ms. Wen's courtyard turned green, and friends came to see them when they heard the news, which she also treasured. One morning, when Ruchun went to see chrysanthemums, carried them to a letterhead with love spring after spring by the side of the flowers, read them over and over again, but did not know where they came from. Because the word spring is his name, I love it even more, so I had a detailed comment on the desk, and the commentary is light and lofty. When Zhang heard that Wen's chrysanthemums were turning green, he found it strange that he visited Wen's study in person, saw the poetry notes on the table and took them up for reading. When Ruchun found her review a bit offensive, reaching for a clump of it. After seeing only 1 or 2 sentences, Zhi recognized the words Shi Yuchen picked up at the door of the good worker's room with suspicion, and even when Ruchun's green chrysanthemum was presumably given by his daughter. Mr. Zhi went home and told his wife to interrogate him. Well-paid workers feel aggrieved, crying to die. There's no evidence of this. It can't be confirmed. Madam also worried that the publicity might be bad, and thought it best to marry Vincent. Zhi agreed, and told Ruchun that when Ruchun was out of the picture. On this day, when Ruchun invited friends and family to feasts to see green chrysanthemums, and burned incense, and played the piano until late at night. After going to bed, the bookworm hears the violin in the library and starts to think it's played by other servants, but looks closely at the violin and there is no one around before reporting it to the owner. When Ruchun went to the study herself, and it was true that the piano didn't play. The sound was stiff and fluent, as if to learn how to play but not how to play. When Ruchun lit up the candle and burst into the room, empty, Ms. Wen took the piano back to her bedroom, where it stopped ringing overnight. When Ruchun thought he played by a fox fairy and wanted to learn to play by himself. So he plays a tune every night, puts the piano in place and lets it play, hiding eavesdropping at night. On the 6th and 7th nights, the tune of the piano was audible. After when Ruchun became a relative, he talked to his good worker about the old Shuchen verse, and then understood why they were able to become a relative, but never knew where the poem came from. Upon hearing the strange thing about the violin self-congratulation, the good worker went to hear it once and said, "It's not a fox fairy. The tune played is deplorable. And there are ghost sounds." Ms. Wen doesn't believe it, and her husband says she has a mirror that shows her house as a ghost. The next day, when Ruchun held a mirror and suddenly entered the study, taking a picture with the light, as a result, there was a girl's son. She hid in the corner of the study as she panicked and could no longer hide. When Ruchun looked past, she turned out to be the Zhao Huan she met while sheltering from the rain. When Ruchun, surprised, pressed her, "I can't say I'm not good for you, so why are you forcing me so hard?" When Ruchun closed the mirror and asked the eunuch to stop hiding, the eunuch promised to come down. When Ruchun put the mirror in the mirror bag, the eunuch sat away and said, "I am the daughter of Tai Shu. I have been dead for 100 years. I grew up loving the piano and Kite understood some things. It's just that the piano doesn't have a name, so under the 9 springs, still sorry." You came into my house in the rain and heard your piano, and I admired your courtship. You asked for my family, and I hated the fact that I was a dead man and could not be a partner. So I tried to help you to make a good marriage to repay your affection for me. Liu Gongzi's lost red embroidery shoes and the words Shu Chun were all my things, and I can't repay the teacher for not being faithful. Ms. and Mrs. Wen listened and thanked her very much. The eunuch mother said to Wen Ruchun again, I can understand most of the piano you play, but I have not learned the magic and reason. Please play it for me again. Ms. Wen agreed, teaching her to play while explaining her fingertips. Huan Niang was overjoyed, saying, Great! I can relate. He said he wanted to leave. The good worker used to like kite. When I heard that the eunuch was good at kite, I wanted to hear her play. The eunuch said yes, and she played. The eunuch's voice and music are so good that no one can hear them. The good worker listened, slapped and lamented, pleading for her study. After writing 18 melodies, the eunuchs returned to their posts, and Wen and her wife kept her again and again. How happy you two are! How close you know each other! How deeply in love! How blessed I am as a bitter man, she said sadly. If you have a relationship, you'll see each other in your next life. If you don't forget the matchmaker, you can hang it in the bedroom. When you're happy, light a column of incense and play a song against my portrait. Then I'll take it personally. The eunuch walked out the door and disappeared.
Alright, this story has come to an end. If you liked it, please give it a thumbs up. Thank you.